On this week in sales, we're going to be looking at practicing your sales skills with a robot, mastering the upsell, the experience economy, and much, much more. My name is Will Barron. I'm the founder over at salesman.org, and joining me, co-host of this show, sales, royalty, recent 27th book being published, which we'll touch on towards the end of the show as well. Victor Antonio, how's it going, my friend?
It is going good. It's a little cold here in Georgia, which is all right, I guess. And I was pre-show we're talking about. I just got back from doing a big event. Well, like I said, 1,000 people in the room. I think almost 12,000 people easy on virtual. But what was surprising is those 1,000 people, were ready to get back in the room, hug, kiss, whatever the case may be, if you know what I mean. Just really be there. And there were hardly any masks in the room, like hardly any. The staff and everybody else was wearing masks. And it actually felt very good to be around humans again.
Very good. What is Boris is just, I might be getting this slightly wrong. I think next week it's now not legally required in England to wear a mask, but lots of shops will probably encourage people to do regardless. What is the legal state where you are for mask mandates and all that kind of stuff, Victor?
Here in Georgia, no mandate. No mandate. But there's some stores, but rare, that says, they politely suggest a mask if you have one available. But I think, Georgia's been ahead of we've kind of been rebels in this state in terms of not wearing masks and stuff like that. Early on for the first year, I think we were good about it. And then slowly it's like, all right, enough of this. So there is no mandate. You see masks, but you know what I like, Will, what's changed in our culture, maybe over there across the pond, it's the same, is that when people wear a mask now, it's not seen as weird. It's just a personal choice. And then people respect that personal choice. Yep. And I think that's a cool shift in thought process.
Yep. It's almost moving culturally to more like Asian countries. Like when I went to Thailand, there was a lot of people wearing masks. When I went to Thailand, have you been to Thailand, Victor?
Singapore, does that count?
I don't think so. Isn't Singapore like a separate state?
Right, but I was going for it.
So I went to all around Thailand. This was with Scouts when I was a kid, and we went to Bangkok specifically. That's where we started and ended our kind of adventures.
Oh, I've been to Bangkok, by the way.
Well, there you go. The smog there.
I guess I've been to Thailand. There you go.
The smog there was insane. You could got off the plane, you could physically taste it in your mouth. So I'm not surprised culturally in different parts of the world people wear masks for numerous different reasons. And so I assume eventually it'll just become like that where no one cares.
Oh man, I got Bangkok, so I got to tell my Bangkok story. It's G-rated, by the way. I didn't realize, I've always been a Muay Thai fan, like Muay Thai fighting. And I remember being in Bangkok. I had one extra day there, one extra night in Bangkok. And I remember I went to see a Muay Thai fight. And the only tickets they had available was like ringside. It was like $120. I'm like, I'll do it. Well, don't ever do ringside at a Muay Thai fight. It is, you hear everything.
I bet.
Do you know what I mean? You hear every punch, every kick, every elbow thrown, the whole bit. It was brutal, man. But it was a great night. But it was like, I don't think I ever want to be ringside again. I think I'd rather watch it on TV because it's brutal. That's a hard sport.
Too much and too many random people's sweat probably and blood getting flicked across your forehead as you sat there trying to drink a beer and watch the fights.
It was great. It was memorable.
Well, with that, Victor, should we jump into some sales news?
Yes. So here's Zoom Info expands global operations into London. I wanted to ask you about this. So Zoom Info, a global leader in modern go-to-market software, data, and intelligence, today announced it has expanded its global operations in London and named Simon McDougall, it's a cool name, and as its first chief compliance officer. And the quote here is, in Q3 2021, the international business of Zoom Info grew over 80% year over year, Will, while our investment in our data assets outside of the U.S. also doubled throughout the year. We're now in an even better position to build on our momentum, says Zoom Info founder, CEO, Henry Shucky Ducky Shuck. Okay, I added the Shucky Ducky, by the way. What are your thoughts on this, Will? Because I thought this was interesting because as I was reading the article that you just showed there, is that, the big emphasis is on data privacy.
So I'm less interested in that. That's just what everyone has to do, the world we're living in. That's only going to become more important as more legislated and stuff as we move forward, right? As more people become concerned about the amount of data that they're giving away for these products. We covered that tons of times on the show before, Victor. But what I'm interested is that there seems to be a trend. We've covered this with multiple companies on This Week in Sales. I've covered this with specific podcast episodes with folks from HubSpot on the Salesman podcast. Lots of companies, US, Silicon Valley-based companies, and companies on the other coast as well, are moving to Europe. It could be that... Here's a question for you. Is it that European startups are just not able to compete with these American companies? European buyers are happy to buy from American companies over European companies. They're not interested in, what's the word, the localization of the company they're from. They're happy to buy globally. Or is it that these companies just get to a certain size, they need more funding, more momentum, more cash, and so the next move is just to move to London and to move to Germany as well?
I think the former, as far as the localization, I think there's some of that in there, but I think the latter is what I would go with.
That was a terrible question, Victor. I just absolutely winged that question and threw about 20 variables at you.
I wouldn't have guessed it. It was a good question, by the way, because on the localization piece, I've seen that happen, that it's one of those things, you're not a king in your own country type of thing, but when you go somewhere else, you're treated like royalty. I think there's some of that. But I also think that, again, we're becoming such a global company that these companies are just expanding, trying to find market share everywhere and anywhere. So I think it's an interesting move, but I was surprised I was shocked. 80% growth year over year, and especially on their data asset side also. So that to me those are amazing numbers. When you're posting those type of numbers, that's big. That's big.
Hold on though, that's international business at Zoom Info grew over 80% each year. So if they've had no focus over the past 10 years internationally, then there might not be much to grow against, if that makes sense. If they've just dominated the US market, which they have, maybe those numbers are maybe that 80% should be 800 if they really double down on things.
And you could be right, but if further reading, 80% year over year, that's international. While our investment in our data assets outside the North America also nearly, again, doubled throughout the year. We don't know what the reference point is. I get your point, well-meaning, but apparently Henry Shucky Ducky Shuck is running Zoom Info the right way. And if he's listening in, take the Shucky Ducky, in stride. Shucky Ducky.
Victor Antonio, wouldn't
it be cool if he started calling him Shucky Ducky Shuck?
I definitely don't think you'd appreciate that. Although I've never spoken to him. He seems like a nice guy, though, in his content and the stuff that he does. Zoom Info seems to do a lot of things for their kind of local communities, their customers and that kind of thing. It's hella expensive, though. I'm working with Lucia.com, which is a not dissimilar product, but perhaps comes from things from a different angle, goes bottom up with their marketing, getting salespeople, small business owners to use the product versus Zoom Info is just, hey, just drop us in with the C-suite because it starts at 15, 20 grand and you can't even see what we've got inside until you kind of pay up and get in there. So there's different approaches to all this. But what I'm interested in, Victor, and I don't know if you know the answer to this question, is where the heck does all this data come from? It was that a certain period of time, companies were just scraping email addresses from LinkedIn because they were so poorly hidden that you could just click a couple of things, look at source code on a page and get email addresses from LinkedIn. But all that's been patched up now. Where does Zoom Info, Lucia.com, whoever is doing kind of B2B lead database management software, where do they get all this information from, numbers and emails?
I'm not sure. The answer is I'm not sure. But, the obvious answer would be they got to be cutting deals with other platforms. Do you know what I mean? I got to believe that there's some type of information sharing quid pro quo on non-competitive platforms. So, for example, if I from Zoom Info, maybe I can go to, I don't know, Hoover's and get some data on investment side and just try to tie in those emails. Even though they talked about anonymized data, we can still figure out who's who. And so I'm thinking they're doing deals with people who are on non-competitive platforms on different products. Because if you think about it, if you shop on, like, what's a popular big store over there on your side of the pond? What's a big popular store?
Tesco, probably the biggest.
What is it called?
Tesco.
So you got Tesco there. So if you have, if you look at the grocery store business, you look at some retail business, all that stuff is being sold in the back end. So I got to believe that's where all the data is being collected from. And I got to believe the AI is saying, here are the data points, the constellation of data points we need to see if we got the right buyer. And so I think that AI is driving where they buy their data from, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. I had this conversation with my girlfriend not too long ago she uses in Tesco, it's called a club card, and most shops will have it. John Lewis is a big department store in the UK. They have their own credit card. And I was like, why do you think that they're giving you points, or they're giving you coupons, or they're giving you discounts? And obviously there was a blank look because she just doesn't care about business marketing or anything, as I was saying this to her. But it's because they're tracking all your data. They're not allowed to legally look at your receipt, align that with a credit card number, and then target you that way. But if they go, hey, just swipe this card on the way in and out when you're getting your petrol, when you're getting your groceries, use our specific credit card in our store, and that's where they're getting all the data from. And obviously, you're right, they're just reselling it. So and that makes total sense for consumer data. But I think you must be right with B2B data, because it's obviously different legislation, different rules, different laws around all that as well, of where that's being scraped and pulled from. I guess no one would ever tell you because that's the secret source, right? But it'd be interesting to know from an engineering standpoint, kind of where that comes from.
I got to believe Facebook sells some of their data to somebody, right? I can't believe they don't.
Sure, but they don't want to give you an email address, because if I could buy salespeople's email addresses on Facebook, I only need to advertise once to get their email.
Right.
They want to own the email, own the gap between the air gap between you and the customer, because then you have to, every time you want to get in front of them, you pay an advertisement every single time. So again, I have no idea where they get these the data from, and users on the platform can verify it, because either you get a response or you get a bounce back or whatever. So that obviously will refine over time. But where they initially get it from, I don't know. I think
LinkedIn is probably a great resource to get B2B information, because the amount of people switching jobs, especially over the last 2 years because of the pandemic, and being able to update all that information. That's what's fascinating to me. It's, the refresh rate on some of these databases. I know Brandon Bornanson over Seamless.ai, we had a conversation on the podcast a while back, and that was obviously one of the biggest challenges, to make sure that the data was fresh, that the emails were up to date, especially as people move around and titles change, position change. It's a fascinating, unseen world that we unless you're in the business, it's hard to see what's going on behind the curtain, isn't it?
Yep, I love it though, because it's obviously not something that someone can do manually. It's computers, it's CPUs, it's things whirling away, AI in the background to do all of it. And if you get the right formula, which the likes of Lucia, ZoomInfo clearly have, because they've got massive customer bases, you become indispensable at a certain point. If you've got that accurate data, you're the start point for every sales conversation for sales teams anywhere in the world for any product. So yeah, cool. Are you ready to move on to the next topic?
Yeah, I wanted to mention in this wonderful book that I have here, this one right here that some guy I know, Victor, wrote, there's an example of Target working it backwards, is that based on what you buy, for example, product sets that you buy, they can figure out if you're pregnant or not. That was the example that I gave in the book about Target. And what's interesting is if we kind of use that analogy, Will, that if I bought 5 different products and that was the product constellation to kind of say there's a high probability that this person is going to have a baby. I think in the business world, it's almost the same way. We look at people who have bought our product and just say, what are the common constellation points? And then once we know what those are, we then go to those sources and actually try to buy the data. I think that's how they do it.
Yep, that makes sense. You've got to be, I get the thing that keeps coming back to though is, I don't know who's selling that data, because that is so, no one's buying. I've got 100,000 salespeople's email addresses. The number of people, both unscrupulous and then big companies who want to market it as well, is insane, and the money behind it's insane, which is why I've never allowed anyone to get in front of that audience other than our own products. But gotcha. Maybe that's the next business, Victor. We need to just get everyone who listens to this show just to give us your email address, give us your company's email database, right? And we'll give you $5, and then we'll sell it for $25. And then it's not quite a pyramid scheme, but it's almost a pyramid scheme. And then we're totally breaking some laws, but everyone's going to be happy.
We're just middlemen. That's all. We're just middlemen. But anyway, let's go on to the next one.
This, Victor, I think you're going to enjoy. This is from techrepublic.com. How was my pitch, Jenny? Zoom's venture fund invests in conversational AI platform. as I
I
pull this
like
back
this
here
one.
so I can see my notes, right? Everyone's seeing my screen. Second Nature announces a 12.5 million round of investment to build out their conversational intelligence service. And this, Victor, is probably not what you think it is. So this is an inverse of what I thought it was going to be, because we're talking about Zoom
Okay.
investing into this. Second Nature's platform uses conversational AI to coach a salesperson and improve their sales skills as well as product knowledge. A salesperson in training runs through a simulated sales call with Jenny. I'm intrigued to why they use the name Jenny, but Jenny serving as the customer. The video conversation is recorded, and each trainee gets a score on their performance with advice on how to improve various elements of the pitch. The Second Nature training platform combines sales training and product marketing education in one place. I've reached out to them, not heard anything back, because I would love a demo of this, to see this in action, to see if this is all just hype, because clearly this is the future of B2B sales training. Perhaps you need someone who internally, externally, who can give you advice that an AI is not going to be able to, right? Of, hey, you could try this, you could try this. The market that they're in, the product, there's bigger things that a consultant, again, internally or externally, a coach can do that AI can't. But getting the pitch right, getting your tonality right, your pacing, being comfortable talking on these platforms, and even just for doing this so often that it becomes so casual that you're not practicing on your customers anymore. You're now practicing and doing all your mistakes on Jenny. This has got to be the future of Zoom remote virtual selling, hasn't it?
I agree with you, Will. High five all the way. I don't know if they have if they're good yet, if the product is where it needs to be. Probably not, because they got more rounds of funding going here. But as you've pointed out, I'm just going to repeat what you just said. This is exactly where it's going. And the ability to kind of program this the right way with the AI is going to be the key here, to have those. But, as you were talking, I was thinking, well, maybe they can tier it, right? We can have some basic conversations, right? Some introductory level type of conversations. And then as you move up in complexity, it'll become more difficult. But if you can resolve let's say the onboarding phase using this type of software, I think it's fantastic.
Yep, gamify it, give you a score at the end of it, have a leaderboard in the office or virtually where you've got to, this is not the best sales analogy, but you've got to beat Jenny and get the deal done. Obviously, we want to work with our customers, not kind of just destroy them. But you understand the premise. People will get addicted to this. Salespeople, high performers especially, if they can gamify it. And let's be very fair and frank, if it's not shit, because it could just be shit. If it's not rubbish, then this is mega.
Yeah, especially on the. You talk to a lot of salespeople. I talk to a lot of salespeople, especially at the beginning phase of their career, right? And for what we consider some like ABC's rudimentary, basic, fundamental skills, to them, it's very novel, right? It's like they're learning it for the first time. And that's why I see a product like this right now at this stage being really effective. Like really onboarding people, getting them comfortable with asking open-ended questions, close-ended questions, guided questions, handling basic objections. This is perfect because that can be programmed in relatively easy.
Yep. And they're talking about product knowledge as well, which is clearly important. And this has got to be more, it's got to be more scalable, especially in a large organization, to have a product manager build a training program via an AI who's engaging with the person, as opposed to them doing it in a classroom environment and having to, if you've got a new product and you've got 10,000 salespeople and you've only got 3 product managers for that product, clearly they're going to have to do a Zoom call, a conference with 2,000 people on a time. People aren't going to be able to ask questions. Maybe it can feedback questions. Heck, maybe it knows what's a good question and what's a bad question and can prioritize them back to the product team as well. So yeah, I'm excited about this. As I said, I've reached out to them, not heard anything back. If I do get a demo, we'll create some content on it and we'll talk about it.
Let's keep tabs on this one. Well, I like to keep tabs on this one. I think this is a good one. I visualize this scenario. You got 2 or 3 product managers rolling out different products, right? And a lot of companies have like instructional designers, right? Creating training. And now I can see the merger of product managers getting together with the instructional individual. And then all of a sudden, the instructional, person now becomes also equipped to be able to program the AI or help the AI with the programming. And I think that's where the beautiful blend comes in. So I'm excited about it. I'm actually excited about that one. That one sounds reasonable and feasible.
Yep. And we all know this is coming. And there's going to be, Gong's going to have a version of this. Chorus who were bought by someone recently are going to have a version. Because I want to practice my call before I do it. I want to practice my pitch before I do it. And again, whether this is useful or not is when all of this will kind of come back around, and we'll see if there's value in it. With that, Victor, why don't you tell us about sales?
Let's talk about embracing. Will. By the way, give us your feedback on thisweekinsales.com. Just go to thisweekinsales.com. Give some feedback on some of these items. And I want to talk about how sales embraces the experience economy. Philip Britt, technology writer. I wanted to highlight this one, Will, and let me go through it, then I have a question for you. Physical retail is going to get more experiential, says Kate Trotter, head of Trends at Retail Consultancy Insider Trends. That's a long title. Trotter sees e-commerce becoming more experiential. That's an obvious one. Quote, across the board, there are all these ways that retailers can entertain customers, educate them, tell their stories better. Now, I'm going to pause here, Will, because I thought that was a very interesting line. You know, the retailers are going to have to entertain customers, educate them, and tell their stories better. What are your thoughts on just like, especially the entertainment piece?
I agree. So this is the idea behind, you'd call it a mall or mall. I've been so Americanized by speaking to you, Victor. I don't even know what we call it over here. We call it something else.
Just mall.
We don't call it a mall. We call it like a shopping center, probably we'd call it. But the whole premise of those was that, well, no one wants to go to the high street anymore. Nobody wants to go to just one shop. You want to go and get your lunch, and then maybe you go bowling, and then the local one to us in Leeds in Sheffield has a indoor ski slope and all that kind of stuff. I think this is similar to that of e-commerce is boring. If you're going to sell a t-shirt, no one gives a shit. But if you can sell a t-shirt in a novel way and there's some kind of experience to it, I don't know what that is going to be. Obviously, that's the magic in all of this. Then people are going to flock to you over other people, because I think the barrier to entry to creating all these products is so slow. It's so low now in the global marketplace that we live in, where people can create software without having to write code, where you can just use tools and middle organizations to create basically any physical product you could possibly imagine. You need that element of experience to differentiate yourself. And it's going to be the same with salespeople. Maybe we just have a sales team full of naked salespeople, Victor, and we do that over Zoom. Maybe we get some deals from that.
I got to say, that's a visual. I was in Phoenix, right? My niece moved over there. And so I took her daughter's my goddaughter. So my wife and I took her shopping. And do you have a store called Build-A-Bear over there?
I don't think it's called Build-A-Bear, but the same thing where you choose the bits and you put a little heart in it and you stuff it and stuff.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Will, let me tell you about it. I was entertained. I was somewhat educated on upselling, because that's exactly what they did.
Yep.
We get there, there's a line, Will, right? First of all, and then as we're waiting to get into the store, we had to wait to get into the store. And that's how popular it was. And the first statement is, hey, by the way, we have a 2-for-1 sale, blah, 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 blah. Just, in case you're interested, right? The first mentioning of an upsell. And I'll talk about it more in depth later when we talk about the book Upselling. But what was interesting is that they really went out of their way to try to entertain us. There were things going on in the store as we were in there. And I guess I don't know if it was distraction, but it was entertaining. And I'm wondering, how do you create that? Like, I've seen when we talk about experiential, have you seen those mirrors, Will, where you can actually stand in front of the mirror and then choose clothes, and it just shows you what the clothes? I mean, that to me is going to be like the ultimate when it comes to wearing clothes. Yep. As far as choosing. Have you seen that?
I do something similar when I buy glasses. I can't remember. I think it's called Glasses Direct. You take a picture of your face, usually on your phone, you put it on the site, and then it 3D maps your face, and it's somewhat accurate. Obviously, it's only. Oh no, I think you take a front picture and then a 45-degree angle picture, and then you try glasses on, and it obviously just virtually puts the glasses on you. How successful that is, it depends on all bits of technology and the lighting and all that kind of stuff. But I've bought tons of glasses now by not going to a store and trying them on. So you're only a few steps.
I've never heard of this, Will. Well, what's the website again?
So it's a UK company, but I'm sure there'll be equivalents. And you just order your glasses online. I think it's called Glasses Direct. I'll have a look in a second. And you just upload your prescription. You upload, as I said, front on from your face, 45-degree angle. And then you just try on these glasses. And the glasses are super cheap. I break my glasses all the time, Victor. I'm standing on them, drop off my head. If I'm, riding my mountain bike, whatever I'm doing, they're always falling off and breaking. So I just buy cheap glasses I buy expensive sunglasses, but cheap day-to-day glasses. And so they do me perfectly. They come like 2 or 3 days later after you've ordered them. And I've gone from spending 150 quid on a pair of glasses to like 20 quid a pop on a pair of glasses.
I'm interested. By the way, I assume that the 45-degree angle is to get the length from, I guess, the temple or where the eye, all the way back to the ear to get the right length.
Yep, and then it must do some algorithm to, because you can then scroll your head as if it's on like as if it's taken a number of shots, and you're kind of doing this kind of angle, so you can see the glasses from different angles. Because obviously, them face on in your face might look fine, but then if they've got weird bits on the side, they might look odd.
I love it. And that's where it's going. So if I could just read the last part of this, the number of consumers using experiential technology is still relatively small. Good point, Will. In the United States, only 1% of consumers own VR or AR units, virtual reality, augmented reality units. And then this was the example I wanted to highlight, but I like your example better. Home Depot, which is a store where you buy lumber and everything for your home here, offers an AR feature on product detail pages for home decor, furniture, and seasonal decorations. Consumers can tap it, see the furnishing in their homes with 3D augmented reality. And they've seen a conversion rate 2 to 3 times higher for customers who use the app compared to those who don't.
So I've got 2 things to add on this. One, if you have a modern iPad, I think my iPhone might do the same. It has, I can't remember the technology, but it's essentially like a radar built into the back of it, so it can 3D map a room by just looking at it. One of the reasons for...
I didn't know that. I didn't. Man, I'm learning a lot from you today, Will. That's rare.
We've had a week off last week, Victor. I'm doubling down. We've got twice the bullshit for me to throw in your face, because a lot of this could be nonsense. Who knows? No, I can't remember what the LiDAR it's called. The technology is called LiDAR. So the reason that they put it in the iPhone was that they wanted to recreate these big, beautiful portrait shots that you can get when you use a camera with a large sensor and a wide aperture, where you get a sharp face and then blurry backgrounds, right? So they're using a LiDAR to recreate that effect. So it is mapping your face versus the background using a radar. It's pinging infrared light, I think, back and forth, measuring the time it takes for it to get from you to, if you're doing it outside, you're never going to get that ping back. So it can separate you from the background, so it can blur the background and give you that kind of portrait-esque shot. That's the point of it. That's why it's in iPads. That's why it's in iPhones. But it also allows you then to map a room. So IKEA have a great app for the iPad where you can have an empty, because we're getting some rooms decorated at the house at the moment. You just hold the iPad in augmented reality. You're looking through the camera. The screen is the room is being shown on the screen through the camera, but then you can plop a sofa in the room. So when you move around, the sofa is static in the shot as you move around it. I'm not explaining this very well, but
no, I get it. I can visually see it.
And anyone who understands augmented reality will go on.
Yeah, how do you see this? Tying it back to This Week in Sales. How do you see this in the sales world? Like, I was reading this and I go, that's cute. It's fascinating. It's great for glasses, great for furniture. But how can we use that and in selling?
Sure. Well, I think with sales, Victor, we always, that was the role we meant. And then maybe I don't want to speak on your behalf. I lean into and tend to think about digital products. I tend to think about products of like zero replication, because that's what I'm doing with our business, right? And consulting and time-based. But obviously there's a massive market for physical products, especially in industry and places like that. If you don't need to do a site visit anymore to do a quote, because you can have someone walk around with an iPhone, measure up the space, and then your industrial coffee grinder, you can get measurements of what's going to fit, what isn't, and maybe you're doing, I don't know, looking at sound, you're looking at lighting, if it's a studio set that you're selling video equipment for, whatever it is. If you can mitigate having to do a site visit, especially if you're doing, you have to fly internationally to do these quotes. One, maybe you can do twice as many quotes as what you could do before. Maybe that allows you to drop 10 grand off the price of things because you're not flying an expert, a consultant out there to do the job. Or maybe it allows you to scale your ability to do more quotes, which typically in most businesses will lead to more deals getting done.
Great example.
So maybe that's how it can be used.
Yeah, that's a great example. Well, you got me thinking like, because you can cut off. time traveling. There was a pool company, no, it was Window World, where they would use not the same as augmented reality, but I thought it was interesting how they would have a camera setup that moves with the actual person. And as you're showing people different things, it was just the camera moved with it. I thought it was really fascinating how you're trying to almost like bring somebody into your living room, right? Or your dining room by just walking around, the camera follows you naturally. So that could be a shallow way of using augmented reality to kind of give people the feeling that they're in the actual room as well.
How about this from a training perspective? You've got a new physical unit in your building, office, whatever it is. You hold up your iPad, you're looking at the thing in real time, and then there's a bunch of pop-ups when you click on, what does this handle do? What does this button do? What does that do? And so rather than someone teaching you in real time, you can do it obviously at scale. So you could onboard people, you could train people quicker with a technology like that as well.
That's amazing. I saw something, and totally off topic, but kind of towards augmented reality, is they came up with the first, I think they're called haptic gloves. Does that sound right? Touch, feel?
Yep.
Where these gloves basically have all these sensors. So it's going to, if you touch something in virtual reality, you're actually going to feel it as if you were actually touching the actual object. And that's scary and cool at the same time, because that's where the technology is moving. I would assume that the next step would be...
I'll go one further than that, Victor. That is cool. I've seen technology where people, amputees, people lost limbs, they have, and I don't know how it works. I'd be just talking nonsense if I tried to explain it, but they have a robotic hand that can feed back data to nerves. So maybe it's not like a one-to-one recreation of hot, cold, or anything like that. Maybe it's they use some kind of a small amount of electricity or something, and you can basically what happens is your brain rewires itself to use that prompt as a to use the prompt that the medical device has given you. Your brain recognizes that as pick up, down, left, right, hot, cold, tight, soft, whatever it is, and your brain just accepts it. So you have that feeling back again, even though it's not driven by nerve, which is insane. Incredible, right?
Totally insane. Totally insane. I'll say, I think the next step in this is that when I was thinking about the glove, that's even cooler, especially if it's somebody's lost their limb, to get the feedback. But the next step has to be a bodysuit, right? Has to be like a full-blown, censored-up bodysuit. I think that's where
it exists.
The ultimate. It already exists.
It exists for virtual reality, and you wouldn't have this at home. It's way too expensive for that. But you can have a jacket and a helmet, and I think it goes on your biceps as well. And then you play these. They're not really the games, but they're beyond like a PlayStation game, Xbox game. They are designed for the experience, right? So they're used it's cost millions of dollars to put the suite together to use at whatever event you're going to use it at. But when you get shot, it will like ping you at certain points. And so it'll give you feedback. Do you get killed? It compresses you, so it makes you feel uncomfortable, and obviously it lets go when you revive. And you do that, Victor, whilst have you seen these omnidirectional treadmills?
No. Okay. What is that?
So I'll see if I can pull it up as I'm saying it. Omnidirectional treadmill. This will blow your mind.
As you're pulling it up, I'm envisioning a spandex suit.
No.
That goes over your body, like a thin layer spandex suit that has all this technology integrated in it already. That's my future, by the way. Spandex suits.
The image I'm going to show you now is a lot more nerdy than what you just outlined. Okay. So this is an omnidirectional treadmill. You wear special. I think you wear like special soles that go on the bottom of your shoes, and it's dead slippy. So you run around on the spot. You don't actually go anywhere.
Right.
But in the virtual reality, you're moving. So now you can go anywhere, do anything. You can use outside in track. I think it's outside in tracking. So you got cameras looking at this dude here, for example. So when he ducks down, it's going to duck him down in virtual reality. So he's literally living in this bubble, and this bubble can move wherever he walks, runs, jogs. And that's
cool.
We're all going to have these in our living room eventually. That is going to be how we exercise. That's probably, if you want to be dystopian about it, that's how we're going to experience nature eventually when we ruin the environment. It's all going to be done virtually.
Yeah, you had to go dark on us. It
Dude,
was good. All right. Let's pull it back to sales, man, before we go too far down that rabbit hole. But I love the fact that all these tools, especially the again the augmented reality, even the items you mentioned, the simple like the glasses. I love the one where you say, "What does this knob do? What does that switch do?" Anything that allows you to interact, I think, is just interesting. Anyway, leave us your feedback on thisweekinsales.com. Let us know, what do you see for sales in the future when it comes to augmented reality? Can I talk money, Will? Can I just talk money for a second in our culture corner?
I've spent so many hours frigging about with these animations and graphics and wipes, and you were just going to bulldoze over it before we've got opportunity to do it. Let's jump into culture corner.
Did you see how smooth he said that? Let's jump into culture corner. You see how he just lost his British accent? He just went into smooth Barry White mode. Let's just jump into culture corner. All right. So anyway, JP Morgan. I saw this morning on LinkedIn. JP Morgan just raised salaries again, Will. Kate Chapman, editor at LinkedIn News, says JP Morgan has upped the ante for junior bankers. Not senior bankers, not experienced bankers. We're talking junior bankers. The investment bank is raising its starting salary for analysts to $110,000 after lifting it to $100,000 last year. That's a 10% raise. This is reported by Bloomberg, citing anonymous sources, by the way. The increases are being applied internationally as well to the second, third-year analysts, associates, employees in bank marketing units, blah, blah, blah. The move follows a similar one by Citigroup earlier this month. Will, is this getting out of hand? I mean, is inflation just so out of hand that $100,000 now becomes a starting salary?
So there's a few things to unpack here, right? A 10% increase over the past year is basically nothing, right? With the rapid inflation that we've had, especially in the US, where you're just printing money like it's no one's business.
Yeah.
So it's not a raise.
No
one's getting a raise out of this.
Shame. Printing that money up.
But no one's getting a raise. It just is what it is. Your salary has just been kept. Your buying power has stayed the same. So that's the first point. 2, should you get a starting salary being an investment banker of $100,000? Probably. If you're driving the bank $1 million in revenue every year, then why wouldn't you get that? I don't even think that's up for debate. That just is what it is. That's market economics. But minimum wage, that's a completely different conversation. And I don't know how political you want to get and how deep you want to go into that. But
I wanted to tie that to that because let me kind of set up a frame and then you can just attack my frame, so to speak. What I'm seeing today is that, pre-pandemic, we were complaining about $8, $9 an hour, right? For standard labor minimum wage. That was $8, $9. People were complaining, we need to raise the minimum wage, right? Pandemic hits, labor shortage. Now we have McDonald's, Wendy's, fast food restaurants offering $15 an hour. I don't know what the percentage increase from 8 to 15 is, but it's close to 100%, right? Almost doubled. Mm-hmm. And people are still saying, I don't know if that's enough, and so. And then now hold that there for a placeholder. One more example, and I'm going to hand it over to you.
Okay.
About two or three years ago, a guy by the name of Dan Price, who has a credit card processing company, gave all his employees a minimum of $70,000 because apparently he read some article or book that your happiness point began at $70,000, right? And I think that he's still in business, so it must be working, or at least he's not failing at it. But I'm starting to think about these salary raises, and I'm going, well, somebody pays for this, Will. That's you and I. As consumers, we pay for it. It's not free. And I'm trying to figure out, where is this all going? Where is this all going? These salaries are going up astronomically. Or is it that I'm just too old and I need to just have a new reset point as to terms of what the minimum should be? Or
I'm going to give you, Victor, I'm going to give you the millennial angle on all of this, which some of it is I agree with, some doesn't align with the data, right? And some of this is people's opinions and thoughts and not science. And we can come back to this idea of the minimum living wage, which can be calculated of, you need a roof over your head, the price of bread is X, milk is Y, kind of thing. So we can touch on that perhaps to wrap up this piece. But Victor Antonio, you being a boomer, right? Bullshitting us all on this. You've got to double your wages. Just get on with it. Get cracking and flipping those burgers at McDonald's so I can drive through and have me lunch. Well, house prices haven't gone up 100% in the past kind of 10, 15 years. I don't know about in the US. I'm talking specifically about the UK, but they've gone up like 300-400 times. My dad bought his first house for, I think it was $6,000, and he was earning like 4 or 5 grand as a salary. The percentage of salary versus what you could buy in that market was insane. Even his second, third house, the house he's in right now, the percentage of house price versus what people were earning, the living wage that people, or the working wage that people were kind of earning, was much closer. So you've got that of, and me, our business does really well. I'm not skint, right? And I'm not trying to brag here, obviously. And I live in a nice house, me and my missus, right? But I'm trying to buy another property at the moment to run the studio out of. It's insane. It's absolutely insane, the house prices.
Same here.
And it's
Same here.
your generation, Victor. It's your boomer, and I'm obviously not you, but it's your boomer generation who have the majority of their wealth and assets in their house. They're also the people who vote. So politicians will never do anything to upset or up-tilt the housing market until perhaps houses of your generation is downsized, and there's going to be some turmoil in that market at some point because everyone's over leveraged in it, especially younger people moving up into kind of from flats into small family houses. There's houses are just insane. So people can't buy a house on $15 an hour. So they're living with the parents, and then the parents are trying to get them out of there, and then they're spending more on rent than what they are on a mortgage because they can't get a mortgage because they can't save for that initial deposit. And I was in that category maybe like 10 years ago, right? When I first got into sales, I broke out of that. I've saved, I've done well, started a business, but I do have sympathy for anyone who is not entrepreneurial, someone who is, doing something else with the market, perhaps values financially different than how I'm compensated for what I do. You're knackered. And then you tie into things like, again, this isn't such an issue in the UK because student loans are capped. But in the US, just mega student loans for these degrees that people are like almost bullied into doing socially. The social pressure to go to university, to go to college in the US and the UK is massive when a lot of people should be learning trades. You're probably going to make more money from being a plumber right now. We can't get I'm looking for a plumber. I can't get one to call me back. Never mind to come and do the work. So you've got all these things compounding of house prices, of inflation, just hammering people who suffered the most. I don't know this to be true. This is a gross over-exaggeration. People who likely financially suffered the most during COVID are not small business owners in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, or people in middle management. It's probably people who were sackable, people who were, I don't know about in the US, but in the UK, we had this big push for, hey, these essential workers. Well, 3 months before COVID, no one gave a shit about the delivery driver. Nobody gave a shit about the person stacking shelves in the shops. And all of a sudden, we really care about them now, but their wages haven't gone up. And it was made very clear that these people are fundamental to the modding, moving and cogs and wheels turning of Western society, I guess globally as well. And they're the people who are getting shafted in all this when someone like yourself, Victor, who I know you said it flippantly, but the McDonald's price goes from $5 to $8, $15, they're still knackered because they still can't do anything. They're still just stuck in this rut of living with parents, not being able to save up for the house, not being able to go back to school, change degrees, change colleges, do something else because they have to work just to put food on the table and they can't get anywhere else. So that was a bit of a rant.
That was quite a rant.
But I feel that's how a
I'm
huge,
just letting you go. I'm like, all right,
that is how a huge proportion of the Western world feel, Victor.
No, the thing is, look, I'm a free market capitalist. So, the price points adjust where they adjust. I'm just trying to make sense of it all. I'm not criticizing that, they went from 8 to 15. I go, all right, everything's expensive.
This is what I was going to say. Sorry, I'm going to interject here. Sorry, mate. And then I'll shut the hell up then.
Go ahead.
When you said, well, who's going to pay for this? Well, these corporations are making, if we're talking about McDonald's, billions of dollars a year for shareholders, as they should, because the shareholders have at least got things going. If not the financial market is a weird beast that's probably a conversation for another time, because we can dive in and out of that, of the value of that really in the capital society that we live in the capital kind of markets that we live in. But if I owned a company, say like we were doing 10 million in revenue, we're not, and we were doing 5 million in profit, which we're not, and some of my staff were suffering, we're tight on cash, right? I wouldn't be giving them 100 grand each. You'd be getting market value for your worth in the company. But if they were struggling, I'd be looking for ways to cut some of that profit out, feed it back, help develop them, train them, and pay them more for doing extra duties or whatever it is. I'd be looking to reduce that profit that at some point just becomes an incomprehensible number that doesn't mean anything to anyone, and you're just lining the pockets of people and other organizations and institutions. Some of those institutions are, pension institutions, so you need those to succeed over the long term. So that's when all this becomes a bit of a grey area. But I would be investing as much of that profit as I could back into my team to make sure that the business is sustainable. If that means McDonald's have to pay 20 quid a burger, the price that Victor Antonio pays when he has a McDonald's, which I imagine is not very often, doesn't change, but the shareholders and the company make slightly less profit. Am I missing something there? But that seems like if I was building a long-term sustainable business that was less influenced or less influenceable by financial markets, that's what I'd be aiming to do.
Yeah, I think a lot of companies right now, and I think I'll use maybe Walmart as an example of a company who has realized that they're not, I'm not going to say that Walmart is now offering paying for college and other little bennies. They're offering these now benefits, and they're not doing it because they're motivated like Will is, right? Because say it's the right thing to do. We're really conscious of what's going on. I think they're doing it because of retention. Yep. It's hard to get people and keep good people. And so the profit motive is still there. The intent is different. I said, we're going to offer all these benefits because we don't want you to leave this company. And so I think that's when market dynamics really kick in. And to me, that's a very effective way of a market to be run. If a company wants to be more conscious, as you're pointing out, and say, how do we push down the profit equation a little further down? Things like what you mentioned, Will, right? Find ways to do retraining or find ways to create special incentive programs for them to make more money. And all that stuff is good because it's not only about giving them something more, it's also about making them want to really work for your company. Engagement is one of the biggest things that companies are struggling with today, is how do you keep employees engaged and operating? And I can't say you're going to do 100%, but how do you keep them operating at a high level? Yep. All this plays into that. I'm just looking at this and going, my starting base salary when I graduated with an engineering degree, right? My first job in 1987, dating myself, right? Yep. Was $28,500 as an engineer. Today, it's got to be at least closer to 100, 105, maybe $20,000. And I'm going, man, it doesn't make any sense. But
hold on. How much? So that needs to be put in context, right? How much was the house that you were living in worth in 1987?
It was in 1987, the house we bought, it was like an 88 or 89, but it was like $85,000. So we're a little bit 2x the salary, a little bit of 2x the salary, if we can look at it that way. So let's just call it, I was making 30, the house was 85.
Yep. So how much would that house be worth now?
That house would be worth now, if I were to guess where it's located, we don't live there anymore, obviously, 300,000 to 500,000 in that range.
So you've gone from a 2x of salary to now 3x to live in the same place.
I'm agreeing with you. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. There's something like weird going on here because the housing prices don't make sense. The supply chain issues has driven the housing prices up. Yeah. I think there'll be a course correction here in the U.S. because as baby boomers are getting older and starting to die off now, that big population is going to leave a lot of empty spaces, in the near future.
But what happens so this is the problem I will take a step back.
We're totally off topic here, but go ahead.
No, but it's an interesting conversation. Hopefully the audience will find it interesting because we're talking about money, finances, right? But I will take a step back here and say I am just a knuckle dragging salesperson. I don't know any of this. I'm just talking out my ass here. I'm only regurgitating things I've read. I don't understand the finer points of the politics of economics, and there is politics behind all of this. There is kind of lobbying behind all of this. There is us plebs, Victor, aren't privy to the.
By the way, it's called printing money. That's what's gotten out of hand. By the way, if I give you this quick stat, and I can't verify it, but I've heard it 2 or 3 sources from news sources that the dollars in circulation today, 40% of the dollars in circulation today in the U.S. were printed in the last year or so. Mm-hmm. And the way somebody explained inflation to me was actually very interesting. It says, take a glass of wine, right? Take a sip of it, and then add some water, and then the government takes a portion of it, and then add some more water. And then continue to add water till you don't have a lot of wine in that actual glass. And I think as they're printing dollars, we're diluting value. So the cost of living is outstripping the salaries, and that gap is growing wider or bigger. And I think that's kind of scary.
Yep. And where I was going with that, when you say that there could be a market correction when boomers and even like myself, I'm at the top end of millennials, start to die off, downsize houses and go into retirement homes, mm-hmm. stuff like that. Well, what happens to that property? It gets passed to their kids. So this is when you got the potential for greater wealth discrepancy, because more affluent families will pass down, and obviously most kids are thick, so they're going to sell it and waste a load of the cash anyway, which re-stimulates the economy, which is good. But anyone who's smart is going to keep all of it. They're going to keep it as an investment tool. My dad has like a small handful of rental properties, which is his like little business that he kind of pays for his retirement. Right? He sold a company to fund all that, like maybe 10 years ago. And I'm talking about a small handful of houses. He's not like a property mogul or anything. But when he, at some point, God forbid, passes on, that'll go to me and my brothers. And then we're not going to sell them. It's going to stay locked in our kind of little business portfolio. And so I just feel bad for anyone who's 18 right now, 21, just come out of university. The skin.
I agree. It's hard.
They've got the competition for good jobs is higher than ever. You now got not competition. You've not just got competition from people in which was your village or your town or the city you live in, just remotely, globally. We're looking at this from the US, UK, European side of things. Maybe this is a boom time for people in India, the Middle East, places where I know a lot of our team are based all over the world, right? The team over at salesman.org, and I pay them, the best we can and more than the market rate for the jobs that they're doing. But if they started on 100 grand out of college and they could work remotely, they'd be absolutely killing it, depending on where they were living and the cost of living where they were.
By the way, there's data. I think the World Health Organization has some data on this, or the World Economic Forum, where they talk about, if you look at the number of people lifted out of poverty over the last 20, 30 years, the numbers are great. I mean, more people have been lifted out of poverty over the last 10 to 20 years. And so there's a plus side to all this, right? Other countries are becoming more developed.
We're clearly in the best time for humans to live ever, even just gone through a global pandemic. Undoubtedly, people are living longer. I think in the US, though, average health markers have gone down in the past 5 years rather than up, with the obesity epidemic and other things like that. So maybe the US is just going to implode at some point, which is what it is. I can't comment on that too much. But yeah, globally, to be a human, you are safer, you've got more opportunity, you're better looked after financially, whether that be via government support or whatever. And this is obviously relative, depending where you're in the world. But I think you'd be crazy to want to live 100 years ago versus now.
I agree. When you look at, if you watch any movies on Vikings, or, during the Iron Age and stuff like that, you're like, okay, I don't want to live. Because I think the mortality rate for men were like 35 to 40. That was it.
Well, imagine 300 years ago, Victor. You're like, right, I'm just going to start my sales career. I'm going to master this tool, this craft, which is incredibly valuable. I'm going to get the ear of the emperors, politicians. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm going to provide for my family. I'm going to start here. I'm going to eventually spin this into a business. I'm going to hire a little team. And then some Viking just comes along, takes all your shit, burns the church, takes all your stuff, and then just floats off on a boat.
I love it.
You're like,
I love it.
Oh. So yeah,
because I worked so hard for this stuff. It's gone, bam, gone. So it's like
a bunch of big hairy dudes with horns on their helmet just comes and just takes it all, and you're like, whoa, dude, what just happened?
Yeah, I just, like I said, I'm just like, it's a matter of, and that's why I started out this conversation on this topic with, do I need to reset my brain again? Because, I'm still thinking, $30,000 when I graduated, and now I'm seeing 100,000 plus. And I'm like, wow, life is changing. But, I can only imagine that people who came before me, pre-World War II, maybe World War I, are saying the same thing if they're still around. If they're 90 years old,
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Your generation, Victor, that was especially in the US, was the golden era of the economy. That was the boom of all booms in all of human history. I'm not saying, I don't like all this like nonsense of like people are privileged, people were gifted this or that. I'm not saying that at all. Just the time you just happened to be in was just happened to be a good time if you were industrious like you are and were, to hustle and make some money.
It is timing, Will. I was watching a documentary on people who's what year they were born and when they started investing, by the time they came of age of investing. And it's interesting how they tracked the markets. And it was really fascinating to see that timing was everything. When you started investing, for example, when you're in college, you're not investing, right? But then you graduate from college, you start investing, right? And if you hit it at the right time, the market was with you. But if you graduated and you started investing and the market was in a downturn or took a downturn, that almost perpetuated all the way through. There was these up and downs. And again, it was all about timing. It had nothing to do with the individual. In many cases, it was just the right time, the right place to invest, and the right mindset. And I think there's so many things that are out of our control right now that, when I hear the thing about, like, for example, you hear the stupid phrase here, white privilege, which just drives me nuts to hear this thing. You know what I mean? Because there's privilege all over the place for any race. But I think it's always interesting how you can always find examples of people who've just managed to make it. There's so many ways to make money today, Will. I know this, there's so many ways to make money. You don't even need to go to college. Nope. That was my mindset. You need to go to college, right? To get a degree and make it happen. Today, you got universities. It's called YouTube. Go to YouTube. You can learn anything you want on YouTube. Go to Udemy and all these places, platforms. And so there's so when I hear stuff about there aren't enough opportunity, I'm like, what? I said, who's stopping you? Tell me who is stopping you. Well, you can start a business from home. Never talk to an individual and make it happen. So privilege is everywhere, I think, these days, especially here in the U.S. I think we're a very privileged country. I would assume you'd say the same thing about your part of the world.
I think people in the US are just soft. From what I hear, your politics and all the stuff going, you're just a bunch of bitches, and you just get on with it.
You're just soft, man. Yeah. You need to toughen up, bro. You need to toughen up, man.
Victor, with that, mate, we'll wrap up on a couple of things. One, and you're going to see it on the screen right now. Tell us how the book is going. I've just bought it this morning on my Kindle, so I'll have a read of this over the weekend.
Thank you. Thank you.
How's it all going?
It's going good. I'm taking a different approach. By the way, I think the number's about 300 to 400 books already.
Amazing.
Which is actually a good start for me. That's a good number for me. There's probably people out there go, well, I sell 10,000 in a day. Well, that's you. So I'm happy with my numbers. I'm doing something different, though. I want to share this with you. It's an interesting concept I've come up with. And that is, I decided to go the self-publishing route and use a CreateSpace on Amazon, right? Mm-hmm. Now, because, and I'd love to get your feedback on this, Will, truly. And that is, I see authors go to these publishing houses, right? And pretty much give up the right of their book.
Yep.
Right. Then they launch the book, and maybe for a week or two, there's all these graphics of me holding the book, me posing with the book, me talking about the book on different podcasts. And then after 2 weeks, just gone. You don't hear any more about it. I'm like, and it seemed to me like insanity to give up the rights to your book, something you worked on for, let's say, a year, only for them to help you push it for 2 weeks and then they own it. Yep. Right? Now you still get a publishing commission off of that. So I decided to self-publish again. And maybe I'm not saying I'm going to discount publishing with a publisher in the future, but here's what I've been doing, Will, and it's been working for me. I think this is a good strategy. I am a pioneer, Will. Listen to me, Will. You're talking to a pioneer in this space now. Let's hear what I've been doing. And it's been working. And that is my live streams, the Sales After Darks that I do on Tuesdays and Thursday evenings. I've been going through my book because it's really all about upselling tactics, chapter by chapter. And you would think that my sales would go down because people go, okay, well, I don't have to buy the book. I could just watch you on video and live stream. But an interesting thing is happening. People are, as I'm going through and I'm on strategy number 4 or 5 tonight, people are going, wait a minute. if this isn't the first 4, I think I want to buy the book. I don't want to wait for this guy to do. So every week, every live stream, so twice a week, I'm doing a different chapter. And it's been, first of all, gratifying, but the feedback and the response and the book sales have been pretty dang good, I think, compared to what I've done in the past. This is really working for me.
Is there any way, and I might be overcomplicating things here, but to get a notification when someone buys the book with a name so that you could even show it on the screen of Barry just bought the book, John just bought the book, something like that.
That'd be great.
And you could.
I don't know if we could do that. I'll have to ask because I know you can pull the reports, but I don't know if you can do the notification. On the last live stream, it was really cool. We had like 2 or 3 people buy, but then Brandon Bornanson of Seamless.ai jumped on the live stream. He says, I'm going to commit to 50 to 100 copies for my team. And I was like, all right, cool. Thank you very much. So I thought that was pretty cool. But
dude, I think you're so smart.
I love your idea.
I think you're so smart for doing this yourself. I've got a book coming this year, Victor. We've not talked about this yet, so we won't talk about it.
You've not mentioned this.
No.
This is like breaking news.
No.
Right here, I want you to put breaking news right here. Breaking news.
Dude, it is
Will's writing a book.
It's just it's done, basically. It's just our training content. Everything is so systematic and formulaic in Semi-Simple Academy, the frameworks. And what I've done, I don't think I've told you this. We'll just talk about it for 2 seconds on the show live. But we have now transcribed all of our podcast episodes, so you actually feature in a bunch of stuff because there's a bunch of quotes. Perhaps we've got a chapter on upselling, and so we need to do an interview on the Salesman Podcast to promote your book. Then the quotes from that will go in my book in the upselling chapter. And so it's not just my thoughts and opinion on things. There's this feedback loop from the show as well. So yeah, the book is, I want it to be a textbook, Victor. What I mean by that is not a page of text. I want it to be it's going to be really annoying and expensive to format, but probably a square page, graphics, illustrations, almost more like a magazine set type versus.
I understood you when you said textbook, by the way. Like, it's like a textbook. It's like, here's the description. Here's some graphics defining it. By the way, do this exercise. Or something like that. Like a textbook.
So
I love the idea, by the way. It's a great idea.
Thank you.
Then you can sell it to a university and live off the royalties and you retire.
Well, then I'd have to do, have to teach my own university course where it's mandatory to buy my book, which is 90 quid a pop. And then I just do a new version of it every year, which changes nothing. That's what they
change a line or something, right?
That's the bullshit that lecturers do.
So yeah. But anyway, I thought that was interesting. I wanted to share that with you because I thought it was just interesting that as I'm going through the book, people are discovering more of it. And when we talk about like the Costco approach, which is, where you go in there, they give you a sample of food. And then if you like the food, you typically want to buy the product. I'm doing the same thing. By going through the chapters, it's almost like giving them a sample. And they go, oh, I think I want to buy the book. So it's a totally new approach, came up with it. And I think this is interesting. So anyway.
I love it. I would be intrigued to see, well, how does that compare versus your previous books? And you don't have to kind of have a go at publish it here.
No, I don't know what the numbers are, Will, but my books have always done moderately well, but to have like 500 books in that neighborhood, I have to sum up all the numbers, but to have 300 to 500 books within the first 2 weeks, I've never had that velocity, but I'm actually enjoying the process of actually going through the book.
Let me ask you this, Victor. Really, this might be valuable for someone who's listening to this, who's thinking about publishing a book. Because I will never give any of my content to anyone else to own the IP of it, because I think that's what the value is. Say like you come up with Victor's amazing upselling 7-step framework process, right? That's intellectual property that you've developed, you've researched it, you've tested it, whatever it is. You get a book published by Penguin, whoever, HarperCollins. Do they own that framework and the IP, so you could not do training on it in person without getting their permission first? Or do they just own the physical book that you've created?
My understanding is that they own the book. They do not own the intellectual property. So if you start doing courses or you start doing keynotes and everything, they don't get a percentage of that. They don't get anything. They just own the book and they take a percentage of the book. That's it.
Sure. Have you seen the faffing that's gone around with Taylor Swift recently and her re-recording old songs and old albums?
Oh, yeah. I think that's really interesting. I didn't know that. There's a rule. What is the rule if you re-record it after a year or two? It was
So
some
there's two
loophole.
types of copyright. There is copyright of the musical performance, and that's what and the master disc essentially, which all other what would be a record, but now is digitally it would be cut from. That's what when you sign up with a label, that's what they own. That's the asset they're buying from you. Because most bands can't afford to go into a pro studio, and they can't afford the promotion, and most bands will make zero money on the master copies, the downloads, the streams, the radio plays, anything like that. But they'll make all the money touring. But obviously, touring's just been kibosh for the past 2 years. So what Taylor Swift owned, Taylor Swift sold, and this goes into deep. There's some good YouTube videos on this, which I'll link in the show notes over at thisweekinsales.com if you're interested in this. But she didn't own the master copy. What she did own was the songwriter credit. Essentially, she owns the original IP that the song was of the song of the musicality of the piece. So she's now re-recording everything, and because she's minted, so you can do it to the same quality, and she's bringing in like the same guitarists that were on the original tracks, and they're now recorded to a higher quality than the original masters because of production increases in production over the years with studio time and stuff. And now she's reselling and restreaming the new masters.
Love it.
Now, what are you going to listen to? You're going to listen to the original one, or you're going to listen to the new higher quality one. So this is over a feud with someone in the music business that she didn't like, who bought her back catalogue and then sold it on to some investment group. They bought it for they bought the company that, and her content was a massive piece of, for billions, hoping to get streams on it, hoping to license it to different films, to events, whatever it is, for decades to come. And she just came on when, I won't say probably what she was thinking. She came along and was like, F you, I'm just going to redo it all. And then my fans are going to stream my music, not the crap that you
I'm not feeling bad.
No.
I'm not feeling bad for those music publisher catalog investors. I'm not feeling bad. Musicians have been taken advantage of for a long time. So this is like revenge of the artist. Revenge of the artist. I love it. I love it.
Victor, I've got one thing I want to plug, mate, before we wrap up, if that's cool with you.
Yep.
So we touched on this, me and Victor did before we click record. Selling Made Simple Academy is going now to a hybrid model. So if you enjoy this content, if you enjoy the content specifically over at salesman.org and you want to spend more time in front of me, we've now changed the program up. So it includes a call with me, you get your assessment. There's then consultant calls throughout the training process, along with the usual online content, the practice tool, the community, all that good stuff. I've simplified some of the program itself, so it's now in 4 modules, 1 week a module, rather than it was over 5 or 6 weeks previously. Just simplified everything. So if you are, and the pitch here essentially is someone who can jump into the training, but would benefit from one-to-one training, tuition. I've just done a few role plays this week, which people got a lot of value out of as well. And you think that's something that would be valuable for you, head over to salesman.org/simple and book a call with myself or one of the team, and we'll see if you're a good fit. And I'm being super strict about this. We're only bringing in a couple of people every month to train, because I really want to generate this year, Victor, some actual savage salespeople who will then go on to be our best promoters in the future.
Absolutely.
That's my goal for this year. Not previously, we're just trying to hit the numbers, just smash as many salespeople, get people in the training, help them the best we can. It's an online course, numbers through it. This year, I'm taking the opposite approach because I'm really enjoying just hanging out with salespeople and basically I'm doing what I do with you on this show, Victor, multiple times a day.
Having a conversation.
Just having a chill.
I hope people check out the website and the content, because I love what you're doing with it, Will. I think the whole selling made simple, the concept, trying to really funnel that, make it simple. But I think adding the hybrid aspect of this is that's a different flavor. And I think that's for people who want a little practice, I should say, or some interaction, some conversation with a guy like you. It's invaluable, man. So I hope check out the website.
Appreciate that, Victor. And I'm no oracle with all this sales stuff, but having an external, essentially consultant, look at what you're doing and give you feedback. Often there's a few small things that can add up to. It's the 10% that I can share with you that can often lead to 90% of the difference in results. The few subtle things, whether that be the cadence that you're using, or the fact that I had one chap on the other day, Victor was doing, he's just doing, I can't say too much, I don't want to kind of dox him, but he's working for a big tech company, he's doing over 600,000 in take home a year. He doesn't have a sales cadence. He's just winging it. He's just sending
And
an
he's doing it.
email, calling
Yeah.
the next week, doing this in his CRM. So we put a cadence in place over a call the other day, and that is going to dramatically reduce his hours and make everything more sustainable for him. So simple things like that we can perhaps help with.
I love it. I wanted to add something really quick just to close up. It really ties to what you're talking about in your program, is that at this event I was at last week, the guy was talking about Michael Brown, who's a blind runner, like, a marathon runner, not a marathon runner, we call it a track runner, right? I guess he's the fastest man, like he's like Usain Bolt, blind, version of it, right? The fastest man on earth type of thing. And I don't know if you've ever seen this, how they actually run, like blind runners run, is that they have somebody
linked to someone else.
They're linked to someone else. And what's interesting is that's what I think about, like your coaching program is like that, right? It's like if you want to run with somebody, it's not that the other person is blind, is that sometimes you need somebody to really run with you and guide you so you don't go off track, so to speak. And that's why I think having those conversations with you, I think is a great idea.
Love it. I love that analogy. Victor, I'll try my best to pull them up because the chat tool that we usually use for this is not working very well. But should we wrap up with just one or two audience questions?
Sure. Go right ahead.
Cool. So let me read these out in real time, the best I can. Okay, Yeshwadan asks, and I've definitely butchered your name. I apologize. I want to know how you would find prospects in ed tech sales, so educational tech sales. Any thoughts on that, Victor? That's quite a broad question.
It's a broad question. I mean, and ed tech sales, the question is, who do you sell to, right? And so if you're saying, well, I still sell to school systems, right? Well, I mean, I'm sure they have events, even virtual events. I mean, the thing is, he should break up his market. I think, well, you tell me if I'm wrong, but I would say I'm selling to public schools. I got private schools. I'll just say religious-based schools. I got private institutions. So I got 5 or 6 different vertical market segments I can go after. So let's say I go after private schools because I think they'll probably have more disposable income, less bureaucracy. Well, I've already narrowed down my market to private institutions. Within those private institutions, I said, all right, where do we want to start? Well, I can't be everywhere. Let me start in Georgia. Okay, great. I can't be all over Georgia. Let me move into at least a 10-mile, 20-mile, 30-mile radius and then figure out what institutions are there. Boom, next, zoom in again. Who do I sell to? Who are you the decision makers? So forth and so on. What are the objections? Blah, 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 all that stuff. Sell to that little small group and then expand out again.
Yep.
So now after I start selling within my 20-mile radius, then I'll figure out how do I get the rest of Georgia and then hire another salesperson and bring them in and go after a different vertical. But I'm all about attacking via verticals.
The only thing I would add to that is if the company you're working for is even a tiny bit sophisticated and you've got a CRM and data in there, look back not just of your territory, but look back over other territories of what the ideal customer persona, ICP, what that looks like for other people. Because if you're just brand new to the territory, it's a new company, there's no CRM, you've got to do what Victor just outlined because you've got to start somewhere and you can start building this data yourself. But it could be that a lot of this has already been done for you and you don't need to reinvent the wheel, even if no one in your company has put 2 and 2 together and done this little bit of research. A morning in the CRM, seeing what your biggest customers across the organization, what they look like, what type of schools they are, what kind of budgets they have, number of pupils, things like that will give you some pointers. Monica in the chat here, Victor, is trying to get you to speak at a speaking event. So there's an email heading your way. There's an email heading your way from that. What else do we have? Jesse says, hello, guys. Happy New Year. Happy New Year, Jesse.
Right back at you, Jesse. I like Jesse. I don't even know Jesse, but I kind of like him already.
Calpe says, Victor is the best. So I assume that I assume that you're just saying that you're great as opposed to being derogatory and trying to pull me down with that, Victor. And we'll leave it there. There's a bunch of questions. We will do a better job with questions next week on This Week in Sales. Victor, anything else to add, mate, before we wrap up?
That is it, man. Let's go have a good week. Let me see. What do I got coming up? Not much. Just a lot of little virtual events. By the way, people are still pushing dates out, though, Will. On the speaking side, people are pushing their dates out and people are going now more virtual. So again, remote selling, virtual selling, hybrid selling, long distance selling is here to stay. So let's work on both.
Amazing stuff. Well, that is Victor Antonio, Sales Royalty. My name is Will Barron. I'm the founder of salesman.org. And that was This Week in Sales.